As someone who's been lifting for a couple years on and off, who's been dieting on and off, and also, most importantly, watching the YouTubers in the fitness space, Mike Israetel, Greg Doucette, Trent Twins, Jeff Nippard, David Lade. There's a really peculiar observation I made. 8 out of 10 times, the old school lifters outperform science based lifters. I myself started science based lifting because I was a nerd all throughout my childhood, and whenever I saw the word science associated with something, I assumed it's the best way because it has optimum form, it has the best programs, and it will lead me to my goals the quickest. I'll talk more about my own journey later, but for now, let's dive right into science based lifting versus old school lifting. I'll go through some obvious reasons first and then some more metaphysical reasons as to why I think the old school lifters are mogging the science based lifters of today. Usually, when we see the pinnacle of fitness, now I'm not talking about the usual health fitness, I'm talking about cosmetic bodybuilding fitness. The Mr. Olympias, well, to each their own, they all have a different program, they all have a different way of training. The only constant thing is their programs have led them to be the best in the world, and surely we both know that genetics play a really big role in this. And so whenever science based lifters are being interviewed on as to why the Mr. Olympias didn't use these optimum weird science based forms, science based programs, volume, intensity, all this jargon, and still they became best in the world, many times their comeback is they simply had better genetics, which is fair. They had top 1% of the 1% genetics coupled with decades of lifting. But you'll see this one line over and over again. They say, the greats could have been greater, as in people who are already great, who are already the best, could have been even better only if they used their science based lifting form and program. Well, this is a really big myth, and I'll tell you why. The reason is hindsight is always 20 out of 20. You might look at Mr. Olympia candidate and say, if he followed my program, if he trained like how I do, he would be even better. If he placed second, he would place first. The only reason I'm not there on the Mr. Olympia stage is because my genetics was simply not cut out for that. And that's why genetics, my DNA, held me back from being the best in the world. Famously, Mike Israetel said this about Ronnie Coleman, that if he used Mike Israetel's Renaissance Periodization protocol, Ronnie Coleman would be even better. They would see an even more dominant candidate, and it will be utterly inhuman the heights he would achieve. Well, I want to explain something to you in life. Growth is not linear. Nobody's life goes from A to B to C to D all at once linearly. That simply does not happen. Growth and progress in life is a function of the experiences, the setbacks, and the lessons we learn. If you say Ronnie Coleman should have stopped doing deadlifts because that would cause harm, instead, he should have done this, he should have done rows, or he should have done some back extension exercises. The thing is, I would counter that with maybe the simple act of doing deadlifts, reaching that peak of physical and mental exertion. Maybe that was why Ronnie Coleman could become so hardcore that he was able to go and participate in so many Mr. Olympias and win 8 of them. Because you have to agree, to be the best in the world, you have to be mental, you have to be fucked up in the head. You can watch interviews with Ronnie Coleman right now. He cannot walk anymore. His organs failed and he walks with crutches and wheelchairs. And you ask him if he regrets anything. And he says, yes, I regret the one time I did 800-pound lifts. I didn't do more reps. He's not regretful about the drug abuse or putting his body through so much mental and physical exhaustion. What he regrets is not doing more. When he hit 6 reps for a, I think, 800-pound deadlift or 800-pound squat. You cannot justify this sort of mentality with science. There's levels to this game. Not everything is just physical muscles and leverage and resistance paths. There's something deeper inside humans, the indomitable human spirit, the metaphysical aspects of strength, of mental fortitude, of being the best in the world, to hold the crown of being the best in the world. that simply cannot be explained through just physical maneuvers of exercise. You see, a lot of life is butterfly effect, meaning one event leads to the other. If you think you started lifting at the age of 20 and you build a really good physique by the age of 24, you might think I would go back in time and ask my 16-year-old self to start lifting so I achieve my dream physique by the age of 20. But that's not how things work. The reason you were able to build that physique is because you experienced life a certain way before that point, before the age of 20. You experienced some heartbreaks, you experienced some red pilling moments in life, you experience your weakness. And that's what pulled you to be strong. Asking your 16-year-old self to start lifting is like asking someone who's already full to eat a full large pizza by himself. He simply doesn't want to, he simply is not motivated to. Even if you force feed him, he will not savor it the same way. The personality you built, the character you built from 4 years of lifting will not be the same from the age 16 to 20. Maybe you go down the wrong path, maybe you start abusing steroids, then maybe you were not emotionally mature enough to trust the process, to build character, to know hardships, to know delayed gratification. So you have to keep these things in mind. The optimum route does not exist. The route that goes from A to B in a linear path does not exist because there are a million other implications to that. There are a million other things that will make that impossible to happen. Now I will talk to you about the main pillars of science-based lifting. Scientific studies where a research paper comes out, it tells the world we took 20 subjects, we put them through this training, and through that diet, we found out that the new method of training was 5% more effective than the old one. So you need to abandon your program, you need to abandon your routine, adopt this new one for 5% better gains. Now, the problem with these studies is the lack of objectivity. First of all, let's cover something. The same science-based lifters who talk about genetics, who talk about muscle bellies, who talk about insertions, they conveniently forget this part when these studies come out. Not every body is the same. You cannot objectively call one program better than the other. Different bodies respond to different stimulus. It's not entirely physical. And honestly, I do not care if doing bicep curls with a weird cable attachment does 15% better gains if I cannot feel my muscle in that. If I feel my muscle better in the regular bicep curl, if I enjoy doing it, then I don't really care about that 15% better margin, simply because you have to factor in other things as well. Enjoyment, consistency, sustainability. All these things are conveniently overlooked when science-based lifting comes into play. And the second dark thing is, you might notice majority of these science-based studies are highlighted when a famous fitness science-based lifter has a new program to sell, a new volume program, a new intensity program, a new 3-day program, a new 6-day program. First of all, there's no credibility to these programs because simply we do not know the test subjects they're picking. If a study is performed with test subjects, middle-aged women going through menopause, is the 15% marginal improvement really all that to me if I'm a 20-year-old man? Different biologies, different environments, they easily cancel out that marginal gain you get from entirely toppling over your current program that works for you and greedily going for something else. If I'm a 20-year-old brown guy living in a hot tropical climate, does the test results done in Norway on white people affect really that much to me? Like I said, biology, genetics, environment, all these things, they easily cover and cancel out the marginal benefits these science-based studies show. The dark part is you can find a science-based study to support any conclusion you want. You can find a science-based studies that shows volume is king. You can find a science-based studies that shows intensity is king. You can find a science-based studies that says you need a whole week to recover. You can find scientific studies that say you need a single day to recover. You can find scientific studies that say you need 2 grams of protein per pound of body weight. You can find scientific studies that say you need only 0.6 grams of protein per pound of body weight. And the difference is marginal. Do you see my point? How subjective science-based lifting actually is. You would think just because the name is science-based lifting, it will be something objective, it will be something universally true, but that's far from reality. I'm sure both of us know about the placebo effect. Simply believing something works will cause it to actually work. Meaning, if you find a beginner and you tell him, do this variation of the bicep curl and your biceps will grow 2 times faster. And he does that and it will grow. You know why? First of all, because doing anything grows. Second of all, because it's a placebo. In his head, it works. In his head, he knows an insider's secret. It will grow even better because his metaphysical self will support that training. It will support that belief. Now, guess what? If it was not a science based variation, it was just an old school thing. You go to a gym, you find a mentor, you find a big brother figure, and he tells you to do deadlifts, he tells you to do benches. There's a sense of brotherhood, there's a sense of community. Because if you really notice, these science based lifters, the so called science based lifters, they're always isolated in the gym. They're on the cables doing weird things, hogging up the entire cable for 2 hours, doing weird variations. I say this in the most respectful way possible. They have no sense of community. They have no sense of actually going to the gym as a social place. They come to the gym for their experiments and they leave with subpar results. Whereas someone who didn't think about it as much, he went through a heartbreak. His elder brother or his friend took him to the gym, told him, "We'll do this, this, this. These are the exercises. This is how you perform it." He goes there, he makes friends, he enjoys going every day. He's consistent because, like I said, there's an aspect of community, of social life to it. He enjoys the training, he enjoys spending time with his friends. Will he not easily outperform the science based lifter on the same grounds of placebo, being more consistent than the science based lifter? In his head, the training is working because obviously he's seeing results. You might say it's 10% less than the science based one, but simply seeing those results reinforces in his head that the training is working. What his peers say about how to train is working. And so the placebo kicks in and he makes even faster progress. He goes with his friend to the steakhouse, he goes with his friend to an egg stand and he gets some protein in. His friend tells him to eat this, this, and that. He simply follows what is tried and tested by his friend, by his community in the gym, turns off his brain, trains for 4 years, and somehow has a better physique than the science based lifter. I'll talk to you a bit more about what these insider secrets and the science based lifting space does to the mind of a young man. As a victim of this space, I started watching YouTube videos from Jeff Nipper, from Mike Israel, going into depths on form and what training is better, how push-pull legs outperforms the bro split, all these things. What all this knowledge gave me was not results, was not muscle. It gave me a serious lack of humility. When I started making money, I spent 6 months in personal training. Over there, the trainer, he had a good physique, he had years of experience, and he would tell me to do certain exercises, he would tell me to do it a certain way, and I would fight him for it. Watching those 20-minute YouTube videos made me feel like I knew better than the trainer because he's not as educated. He doesn't show me scientific infographics when telling me about an exercise. And so I started interfering with the training. I started applying my own logic to it. By the way, a logic that has no physical grounds to stand, a logic that is just learned from theory and YouTube videos. Compare that to the experience of a certified physical trainer whose living is literally to train people and make them better. I did this for 6 months. I made very little gains simply because I was not consistent. I could not blend into the environment because I was doing weird science things. I didn't listen to him about diet. I said, this is too complicated. It's calories in, calories out. I did all this bullshit just to have a mediocre physique. Still, a similar thing happened to me with boxing. I did boxing for 1.5 years. I made super good progress in the start because I was simply following what my boxing trainer said. After a while, my ego got the best of me. I thought my boxing trainer is not an international fighter like the guy on YouTube is. He doesn't know as much as the guy on YouTube. Maybe he doesn't know the technicalities of it. And so I started betraying my actual physical boxing trainer for a guy on YouTube who would tell me on how to throw jabs a different way than my trainer did. And the thing is, like I said, it might be 10% better, but doing things the way my physical trainer wanted would make me grow much faster. I would grow and reach a point in my boxing journey where I could be self-sufficient, and then I could make these little tweaks by chasing those 10 to 20% better jabs. I let go of my training regimen just because I was not congruent mentally with my physical trainer. I disagreed with him on the methodologies of training, on the technicalities of training. I became complacent. I started skipping sessions. I slowed myself down, and you see how this false narrative of knowing something made me better actually held me back. There's a common misconception that knowing is half the battle. Trust me, it's not. Knowing is a blessing, but in no way, shape, or form does it affect actual real world results. Because if knowing was really all that, all of us would be billionaires with six packs by now. But we're not. There's a difference between knowing and practical experience. And lastly, even if all my points didn't put justice to my thought, I'm getting low and simply calling out the physiques of science based lifters. When you see their physique, everything is good, everything is in the right places. The bicep peaks, the shoulders, the chest, the abs, everything is in the right place. But somehow the harmony is off. Somehow, even having all those muscles, they lack a harmony, they lack a robustness. That doesn't come with overthinking, but it comes with a just do it mindset, a physical robustness that screams a rugged sense of strength. That is something you will simply not achieve by doing weird bicep curls on the cables. And honestly, my physique is not all that good, like I said, but I'm going to retard max now. I'm going to follow the old school way of just listening to someone who's more experienced than you in physical life instead of someone on YouTube over the internet. Just sticking with that training and diet without questioning everything, without trying to over optimize everything, and build a good, robust physique. That's about it. See ya.